Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, we are fast approaching the 241st anniversary of this nation's Declaration of Independence. That's right. Founding Father Thomas Jefferson sat down 2 days from now, 241 years ago, to pen those immortal words, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain fundamental and unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These pillars of American identity were forged in a time of great uncertainty. Our founding fathers were taking a gamble, one against the best organized military power known to Earth in the mid to late 18th century. And they were taking a leap of faith that this new system, this new ideal in which the people would be the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, they were bringing it to life. They handed us the longest standing constitutional document throughout the entire course of human events. And we are so fortunate that they did so, because we are a nation that is based on the natural order of things, or the natural law tenets. And I know that we've oft-times reiterated this on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it is so important that it bears repeating again. This dream that our founding fathers had was meant to last for all of posterity, meaning until the time that life on God's green earth ceases once and for all. And that's incredible. It's incredible because it speaks volumes about what our founding fathers believed and what they desired for the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which were yet to be born. We are the beneficiaries of the greatest birthright and inheritance of any people on the face of God's green earth, and that birthright is our shared United States Constitution. And the war in which our founding fathers waged against the British Empire proved definitively that this sort of system is one that works. They handed us the most stable, secure, but above all free society that this world has ever known. And it is so easy for us, some 241 years later, to sit back and take it all for granted, to forget the type of sacrifices that were made by our founding fathers to ensure that this free nation and this great republic would come into fruition. You see, one of the things that's expected of us is that we be not only a virtuous people, as that sagacious founding father Sam Adams said was necessary for us to be a vibrant, strong, and dare I say robust republic, but we have to be stalwart in the defense of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because without those rights, as my first officer Jeremy Graventon and even our first Air Marshal Mr. Nelson Ward have repeated on previous episodes of our state-of-the-art radio program, then we are truly left with nothing. And that's something that we cannot afford to ignore. It is something that we have to remind ourselves of on a repetitive and, dare I say, constant basis, because in this fast-paced modern society in which we live today, it is easy for us to lose sight of just how significant, substantial, and important that really is. And what makes it all the worse is that the two mainstay political parties of the modern American system of polity have basically abandoned any and all notions of this, any and all understanding of this. The rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media has done everything within their power to bury it. They don't discuss the true meaning of what it was that forged this nation, or why that is so significant to us, both as a nation and people. It's because they loathe and despise this great country that our founding fathers handed to us. They don't want people to believe that if they pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they set their minds and visions to the heavens and beyond, that they can accomplish anything. They don't like that rugged individualistic spirit. But that rugged individualism is a defining characteristic of our shared national heritage, character, spirit, but above all, identity. And you know, we've discussed how the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and the historical revisionists and the Common Core standard bearers of education all are trying to dumb down the up-and-coming generations in this great country. They don't want them to think about this because they want them to be docile and malleable in their hands, like clay in the hands of a potter. Now, why would they want this? Well, it's because deep down, the very thing that they are building to create is something that has no place in an open, honest, but above all, free society like that of these United States of America. Again, our founding fathers were taking a huge risk. There was no guarantee for success, but they had faith in the cause of liberty. That was something that propelled them. It drove them. It pushed them to strive to achieve that which seemed unobtainable. And again, that's the kind of defining characteristics and spirit of the American people that has buoyed us to such lofty heights in our nation's relatively brief yet illustrious history here on the face of God's green earth. And therefore, as we approach the 4th of July, the day in which we declared our independence from the Empire of Great Britain, I think it's important that we sit back and reflect upon just exactly what it was that was handed to us, just exactly what it was that our founding fathers had given us, because they did risk everything. They did take a leap of faith. And when we think about the way that the historical revisionists have been attempting to tear down our national heritage, character, spirit, but above all, identity, it's all the more important that we reflect upon it. To get down to the truth, to get down to the real meaning of it all, and why it is significant to us. And it's shocking that there really is some force here, led by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, to refuse to teach the Declaration. They're not even teaching it to elementary school children anymore. You know, rote memorization of it. But it's such a beautiful document. It starts in Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. And what's important to note about this is when you look at the original drafting of it, the United part of United States was not capitalized. This was, again, the whole notions of the true tenets of federalism, where there is a proper and harmonious balance between the central government and the respective governments of the several states. But it goes on. It says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. So right there, you see the underpinnings of the natural law. Those natural law tenets, which by their very nature are immutable, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were at the time of the drafting of this sacred script. It goes on. It says, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This was a bold proclamation on the part of our founding fathers. This was a stance for liberty. It was saying to the agent provocateurs of tyranny and despotism that we are not going to tolerate your chicanery. We are not going to be second-class citizens. We are declaring ourselves sovereign individuals. And here's the most famous lines of it yet. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Right there is another reference to the natural law tenets. This is something that dates back to the Magna Carta, that was signed on a muddy field in the summer of 1216 in Runnymede, England. The baronage, or the landed elite of England, forced King John of Robin Hood infamy to sign that document. That was the start of the supreme law of the land. And the finest embodiment of that can be found in our shared United States Constitution. That is the perfect embodiment of it, or as perfect as we can reach in this mortal earthly realm in which we live. And that governments are designed to work on behalf of the people. And that when governments fail to do so, that is when people have the right to separate from that government. It goes on that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So you see, this is why in the First Amendment, one of the least utilized and understood attributes of it is the ability and indeed the right of the people to petition their government for a redress of grievances. And when the government refuses to heed that petition or continues to act in a way that is violative of these natural law tenets, then the people have the right to alter or abolish it. It is stated clearly in black and white within the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson went on, saying, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. In fact, what Jefferson was saying there was that this was not an easy decision for the colonists. The colonists still viewed themselves up until this point as faithful and loyal British subjects. But the tyranny and the chicanery of King George III led them to this position. It pushed them to make this Declaration of Independence. And it was through this adversity and through this brave, bold, and dare I say, noble stance on the part of our sagacious founding fathers that gave rise to this, the most free and independent representative republic that the world has ever known. And when you stop and think about that, that's just incredible. We are incredibly fortunate that this is one of the foundational documents of these United States of America. And it's incredible. It truly is. And of course, our current government tends to ignore this. But here's the thing. When we lay down the basis for good government, we are prepared to take the stances that are necessary to ensure that our nation and our people are allowed to exercise their freedoms. And as Jefferson says, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. That means that the Founding Fathers were well aware that it takes a lot to push people into this position to foment rebellion. And they were fomenting rebellion. The Crown and Parliament back in London certainly would have viewed this as an act of treason. And it's why Benjamin Franklin said we either hang together or we will most certainly hang separately or individually. But, as Jefferson goes on, when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reproduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. That is incredible. That right there, in those beautiful, dare I say, poetic words penned by that sagacious founding father, Thomas Jefferson, completely encapsulates and embodies the spirit of the American Revolution that gave us this free republic, that allowed us to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, in solidarity and unity, and say that we are a new form of government. We are a republic that is based on this notion, this undeniable notion that the people are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. It's so beautiful. It is so beautiful. He goes on, such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. In other words, when you have been pressed into a corner, and when the government is not responsive to your petitions for a redress of grievances, then you are left with no options. That is why the preamble to our shared United States Constitution starts with the immortal words, "We the people." It is we the people who declared our independence from Great Britain. It is we the people that established this great representative republic of ours. And it is we the people who are charged with the responsibility, the duty, the obligation to maintain a government that adheres to the best interests and to the rights of men. And here's what it says. The history of the present King of Great Britain, that of George III, is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. So essentially, what our founding fathers were doing was providing justification for their acts, declaring to the world that they were no longer the property of the Crown and Parliament of Great Britain. That was a very bold proclamation. It was a very bold move, a very brave move. And again, we are absolutely fortunate that that is what our founding fathers did, because it gave rise to this great republic of ours. And without it, we would still be subjects to a tyrannical and despotic monarchy. And so here are the facts that were proclaimed and professed to the world by Thomas Jefferson, speaking on behalf of all the Founding Fathers. It starts. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. In other words, refusing to address a petition for a petition for redress of grievances. That was the major thing. Remember, the intolerable acts had pushed the colonists to this state. Judicial review in Great Britain was being applied with this notion of virtual representation, in which the colonists had no direct say in the personages that would govern them and in the decisions that would be held. Their own courts, their own houses of burgesses and representational bodies had been swept aside so that the crown could command central dominance in all workings of government. That was something that they were not accustomed to. That was something that worked against all that they held near and dear, and that is what pushed them to declare their independence from this rogue, tyrannical, and ultimately illegitimate crown. And that is exactly what they did in making this bold proclamation. The Declaration of Independence was the first step towards nationhood. But above that, it was the first time throughout the entire course of human events that we as a nation and people, or indeed any nation and people, had decided to define itself on those immutable natural law tenets, or the natural order of things. It's incredible. It is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. And just think about how fortunate we were that we had the Founding Fathers that we did. These brave men who put sacred honor above all else. They risked everything, their lives, their fortunes, their personal safety and well-being. And they did it for something that was untested. But they also had faith that there is a greater good, and that greater good is part of the defining force that has shaped us as a nation and people throughout the course of these past 241 years. Yes, that is a brief period of time in our nation, in world history. And it was something that we had, the world had never done before. Never seen anything like that before. And so it was revolutionary in the sense that no nation on the face of God's green earth had ever been established with the people as the supreme sovereigns. Again, that is something that is truly miraculous in its scope and magnitude. And the applications of it and the ramifications of it are still being felt to this day. Because if you think about the Marxist revolutions that really kind of got their start before Marx was even alive, with the sans-culottes and the Jacobins in the French Revolution, started immediately after the American Revolution. And then the revolutions of 1848, the Bolshevik Revolution, all of those revolutions lacked one key characteristic, one key component that was a definitive one with respect to the American Revolution. And that was this notion of morality. And again, it harkens right back to the sagacious advice of that founding father, Sam Adams, when he said that in order for the United States to be a strong, resilient, and dare I say, robust republic, the people must be a virtuous people. In other words, we must live by a high moral standard. We must be able to differentiate and distinguish between that which is clearly right and that which is clearly wrong. Yet, what is it that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are attempting to tear this nation asunder from within, using the tried and true, albeit threadbare, tactic and strategy of divide and conquer, attempting to do. They use the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism as a blunt instrument to bludgeon the American people, to tear us away from the foundational spirit and indeed those immutable natural law tenets that have defined us and that were so eloquently and beautifully pinned in the Declaration of Independence 241 years ago. They are completely antithetical to the foundational spirit and image that our founding fathers had devised for this nation all those years ago. Instead, they want us to embrace a system that has a well-established track record of failure, a system that has no place in an open, honest, but above all free society like that of these United States of America. And their end goal is to essentially enslave us. They want to force us to bow down and capitulate to this out-of-control leviathan of an administrative state in which we have no direct input, no direct say, and in which we are forced to fight one another in disparate and competing factions. And in fact, that is the primary impetus behind the father of our nation's, George Washington's farewell address of 1796, in which he warned us not to break down into disparate and competing factions, because if we did so, then we would lose sight of the overarching picture and that which is truly important, that we would replace the natural law tenets with penultimate solutions for problems that government created in the first place. That is exactly the scenario that is playing out in this fast-paced modern society in which we live today. We have to heed the sagacious advice of our founding fathers. They truly did possess a marvelous understanding of the human condition, of the human psyche. And it is the natural state of mankind to yearn to be free. Where freedom is, individual responsibility is cherished. And that's the thing. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want there to be individual responsibility. They've come forth and made it their duty, their sworn obligation, to essentially go forth and claim that they can do the difficult thinking for you, to make the weighty, lofty, and life-impacting decisions for you so that you can just sit back and be complacent, fat, dumb, happy, but above all, dependent. But that's not true happiness. True happiness comes from those two fundamental pillars of American society and culture, those of self-determination and self-responsibility working in tandem, thereby delivering unto us self-determination. When the American people are self-determinate, that is when our nation does best. That is when we rise to any challenge and overcome any challenge. But it requires that we foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator, as Thomas Jefferson so eloquently stated in the Declaration of Independence 241 years ago. This is why the history of the United States is so important. And this is exactly the reason why the historical revisionists that infest our ivory towers of academia from coast to coast and border to border in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours are doing everything within their power to incrementally eradicate that notion, to eradicate our clear and working knowledge and understanding of the formation of this nation and everything that it has stood for since its inception. That is the true nefarious deeds that we are facing. Those dark and twisted machinations of the frothing of the mouth Fabian socialist leftist has been implemented over the course of the past century and a half, folks, to redefine us, to cause us to turn a blind eye to that which is truly unique, truly exceptional with respect to the United States. That's why I take issue with Donald Trump when he said that he doesn't like the term American exceptionalism. When he stated that, he tried to make it merely about economics, showing that he doesn't fully understand exactly what the magnitude of that statement is, what the true purpose and impetus of that statement or phrase really is. Because what that is it's about who we are. That is what the Declaration of Independence was all about. And when we ignore that, and when we attempt to erase that from the collective knowledge of this nation and people, that is when tyranny begins to set root in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And ladies and gentlemen, that is something that we can ill afford to allow to come into fruition. We cannot allow that to continue unimpeded or unchecked or unchallenged. It is so important that we both, as a nation and people, stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity and take a moment to reflect upon exactly what it was that our founding fathers put at substantive risk to bring about this great sovereign representative republic of ours. And it goes on with Jefferson's beautiful words here in the Declaration of Independence. He has forbidden his governors to pass law of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. That's absolutism. That's something that the provisions of Oxford in England prevented him from doing from the, to the subjects living in England at the time. Again, this is speaking directly to virtual representation, where all of our representation would be done in Great Britain, and we would have no direct impetus or input or say as to what was being foisted upon us. And that was completely alien and foreign to our founding fathers. And of course, it drove them to foment rebellion, to seek to declare their independence, because they felt, rightly so, that the agent provocateurs of tyranny and despotism were orchestrating against them, preventing them from doing the things that a free people do. Now, it's so important to recall that during the time of the American Revolution, England was the only constitutional monarchy. Really? France was absolutist. The German principalities, although not one nation yet, were certainly absolutist. Yes, there were other little republics like the Netherlands, but they weren't based on the same type of freedom or the same type of natural law tenets that the United States were. This was new. This had never been attempted before. And then Jefferson said, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. In other words, Jefferson was claiming that the King of England was treating the 13 colonies as an afterthought. And that's what they did. That is what George III did. He thought of us as an insignificant little gnat, as his own property, and that we should just bow down to his great reverence and his great resplendent nature, even though nothing could be further from the truth. That kind of despotism leads people to feel as though they have no other recourse other than to separate the chains that bound them to their government. And that's what the exercise of the Declaration of Independence was all about. Our founding fathers were risking everything. In the mind of the king, they were committing treason, an offense that was punishable by capital punishment, by death. But they so believed in the cause of liberty that they thought the benefits far outweighed the risks of taking this stance. And believe me, they were slow to take this step. It was not an easy step. They agonized over their decision. But thank God they made that decision. Thank God they gave us the most stable, secure, but above all, free society and nation that this world has ever known. Ladies and gentlemen, we truly are fortunate. I cannot emphasize that enough. The foundation of these United States of America is truly something that was exceptional. It's extraordinary. It's something that stands out within the course of human events, something that does not happen very often. And this is why I get mad at the left when they say that American exceptionalism is haughty arrogance. It's why I get upset with the 45th president of these United States of America, Donald J. Trump, when on the campaign trail he sat there and said that he didn't like the term American exceptionalism, that he thought it was unfair, that he thought that it wasn't reflective of who we are. That means that he really wasn't giving much thought to the foundational documents of these United States of America. And yes, I have a problem with that. And it's not as Edmund Kozak over there at Laura Ingram's LifeZet page said that those of us who are dyed-in-the-wool constitutional compositionists, in other words, those of us who wish to return to strict adherence to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution at all levels of government, mistake the Constitution for perfection. No. Again, when we point to the immortal words of the preamble to our shared United States Constitution, it says, in order to create a more perfect union. Article 5 of the Constitution, which allows for the amendment and ratification process, clearly speaks to the fact that we didn't believe it was a perfect document. In fact, the father of the Constitution, James Madison, said, it's not a very good document, but it was the best we could do at the time. And yet it's the longest contiguous running constitutional document of its type, legally binding document of its type in all world history. So while he may have thought it wasn't very good, but it was the best they could do, their best is a damn sight better than almost anyone else's. Clearly than any other nation on the face of God's green earth. Again, this is speaking volumes about the personal integrity that our founding fathers possessed at the inception of this nation. Their willingness to come together and to sign the Declaration of Independence 241 years ago marked a turning point in all world history. That if people commit themselves to the natural law tenets, or in other words, the natural order of things, and they have faith in that cause, then they can change the political atmosphere of all humanity. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what our founding fathers did on that summer's day in 1776. They took the first step in a monumental journey in the quest for liberty. Did they create a perfect system? No. It's not possible in this earthly mortal realm in which we live to obtain perfection. But it's the closest damn thing we've ever gotten. towards achieving perfection on this earthly mortal realm. And again, that is not some small thing. That is not something to be poo-pooed. That's not something to just be discarded with or treated in a nonchalant fashion. No, that is an amazing, dare I say, miraculous happenstance, and it occurred right here in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the exceptional nature of the foundation of this nation and republic speaks volumes about who we are both as a nation and people. This is the very reason why the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have gone out of their way to try and eradicate and destroy this history from the collective memory of these United States of America. And they're not about to relent, because they believe they see a light at the end of the tunnel, and that means that their victory is within grasp. That is the magnitude of what we are facing as a nation and people right now, as I sit here, speaking into this microphone, conveying this message unto you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members. Again, it is not something that we can take lightly. And again, it speaks volumes to just how fortunate we are. But we must avoid the mistake of taking our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights for granted. Because the moment that we do that is the moment that we allow the floodgates for tyranny and despotism to be opened in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave, and I don't think we can afford that. The entropy that these socialists want to unleash upon us, unraveling the natural order of things to replace it with a failed system, a system that leads to oppression, a system that leads to the destitution of the soul, that is not something that should be tolerated in a nation in which the people are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Then it goes on. Jefferson states also in the Declaration of Independence that King George III has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. So, in other words, by stripping and depriving the colonists of their houses of burgesses and their local houses of legislature, the king was acting as a supreme tyrant. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is why one of the outspoken founding fathers, Thomas Paine, went so far as to say that of all the governments or forms of government ever created by the hands of men, none is more wicked than that of monarchy. You see, the monarch had the ability to be the sovereign. And in England, sovereignty was a bit different in that it was defined as the King of England with consent of Parliament. Well, sovereignty in the United States rests with the people. And the government is only legitimate and is only righteous when it operates with the consent of the governed. Yet we have so many within this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours who want to dismantle our legislature. They want there to be a president who is imperial in nature, who can act in a unilateral fashion. But no, that is not what our history is. That is not what the legacy that our founding fathers left us is. And that is certainly something that we should reject at any available and given opportunity. Because again, that is what allows despotism and tyranny and, above all, oppression to take root in this liberty-loving land. And again, I'm reminded of the sagacious words Benjamin Franklin. Those who sacrifice essential liberty in order to purchase a little temporary security deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall surely have neither. Let those words soak in for a moment. Think about the great impact that that has. And then look at the way that we have been consolidating power within the hands of this Leviathan, out of control administrative state that is ultimately unaccountable to and has no direct input from the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people of the United States of America. That is literally the problem that we are facing. Although it's not a problem because there is a resolution to it. And that resolution is that we all foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because when we do that, no rogue, tyrannical, and ultimately illegitimate government can strip and deprive us of our rights. And it empowers us to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity and to send a resounding message that is in no uncertain terms to the agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, but above all oppression, that we will not tolerate their chicanery in the land of the free and the home of the brave, that we will not sacrifice our liberty for a sense, and a false sense at that, of temporary security. And the reason we won't do that is because we are a self-determinate people. And remember that what Jefferson was saying in the Declaration of Independence was that the government is to protect our ability to do that. And when the government fails to do so, then the government is one that must be altered or destroyed. You know, ladies and gentlemen, there's no middle ground in that. And the reason there is no middle ground in that is because it is based in the natural law. And the natural law can be universally understood through the simple application of human logic and reason. Stop and think again about how miraculous that really is. That is the fundamental undertone and current and the definitive attribute of American exceptionalism. Again, this may seem abstract on the surface, it may seem pedantic in nature, but no, it is serious. It is deathly serious. And yes, the frothing of the mouth Fabian socialist leftists truly understand this. That is why they are going out of their way to use heavy-handed tactics. It is why they attempt to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. They want to usurp the rightful and legitimate authority of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, and to replace it with some sort of an oligarchy, thereby ultimately transforming this constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic with some sort of a frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist dystopia torn straight from the pages of an Orwellian nightmare. Well, enough is enough. We as a nation and people cannot afford to tolerate that. And we must call out anyone who operates in direct contradiction of the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. But how do we do that when we don't foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of it, and thereby also of our God-given rights? The answer to this rather rhetorical question should be both open and obvious. It would be impossible for us to do so. That is the only way that we can ever truly hope to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity. Now, I realize that this is far easier said than done. But done it must be. And the only ones who are capable of this, the only ones who have been endowed with the authority, the wherewithal, and the ability to do this is ourselves. Thus, we can't look for some sort of messianic figure or for the government itself to do it, because that is insanity. No, we have to take this duty, obligation, but above all, responsibility on our shoulders, and on our shoulders alone. That is how our founding fathers intended for this nation to operate. That is how they designed it. That is the foundational image of which they envisioned, dating back to the time that they put the quill to the parchment and iron gall ink to give us the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and then ultimately the Constitution of the United States of America. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the natural progression of the formation of this great republic of ours is exceptional. It's something that had never been seen before throughout the course of human events. It's not arrogance or hubris. We are right to have pride in what we have. We are right to believe that we are a fortunate people, because, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, we are a fortunate people. This birthright of ours is sacred. It is exceptional. It is extraordinary. And it must be defended by us. Otherwise, the agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, but above all oppression, will have their way with this nation. They will make us subservient to this rogue, tyrannical, and ultimately illegitimate leviathan of an administrative state. And yes, they will attempt to bamboozle us and make us believe that they are doing this in our best interest, when in fact nothing, and I mean truly nothing, could be further from the truth. What this is chicanery of the worst sort. It is an attempt to strip and deprive you of your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And as the father of the Constitution, James Madison, said, it's not going to be just one fell swoop in which our liberties are deprived and usurped from us. Rather, it is through the gradual incremental usurpations over time. So that at some point in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we will awaken to not even recognize the nation in which we live. That is something that we must be eternally vigilant against. And you notice, that is exactly the process adopted by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists in their incessant attempt to tear this nation apart in order to redefine it towards their own dark vision, towards their own machinations. We, both as a nation and people, must do everything in our power to wholly reject these positions outright. Because they are not in the benefit of the nation. They are not advancing the cause of liberty as our founding fathers did 241 years ago. They are standing in diametric opposition to all that we hold near and dear as a nation and people. That is the self-evident truth of this modern age that we must accept. Going back to the words of Thomas Jefferson within the Declaration of Independence, he stated that King George III has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Again, acting unilaterally, creating this dictatorship. And all of this stems from that notion of virtual representation. And in a way, that's what those who are pushing for this leviathan and out-of-control administrative state are attempting to establish right here in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave. They're wanting to create this government that does not have to answer to the popular sovereigns, thereby undermining our sovereign authority with each and every successive passing day. We cannot allow that to come into fruition. We cannot turn a blind eye to that, because that does go against all that we hold near and dear, both as a nation and people. Then he goes further to say he has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. So once again, a complete disregard of the petition of the people to their government for a redress of grievances. Again, folks, you can look at each and every one of these steps and you can find something that is equal or even surpassing these usurpations occurring right here, right now, in our modern system of American polity. It is because the government has so far distanced and divorced itself from the foundational tenets of this great representative republic of ours that our founding fathers would not recognize this sort of tyranny and despotism that was created, other than to say that it is even worse than what they encountered with King George III. It goes on. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. Wow. That was a revolutionary spark. That was something that was a clear warning shot to His Majesty King George III. But that's the other natural law tenet that is not being taught to the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born right here in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. This whole notion of what he was saying there, you can find that embodied again in the 10th Amendment to the Bill of Rights, or first 10 amendments to our shared United States Constitution. What's not directly spoken to by the supreme law of the land, which, if you recall from the Supremacy Clause found in Article 6, Clause 2, is none other than our Constitution, then it is reserved to the states and the people respectively. Not rights, but power. States and governments cannot and do not have rights. The people do. Jefferson then went on to say that King George III has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the condition of new appropriations of lands. In other words, he was controlling the ability to move to the United States, to become part of the United States, or to even own land in the United States. Then it goes on. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing the assent of laws for establishing judiciary powers. There again, requiring us to bend the knee of the judicial review of the courts of the crown. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is part of the reason why the power of judicial review was not found within the four corners of the third foundational article of the Constitution. Article 3 did not give the Supreme Court the power of judicial review. Again, because our founding fathers viewed the central government as nothing more and nothing less than a necessary evil. Not something to be entrusted with carte blanche. Not something to be turned to as some sort of an end-all, be-all solution for the cornucopia and plethora of problems that face us as a nation and people. Yet in this modern, fast-paced society in which we live today, that is exactly what we have started to do. and it's destructive, and it is evil. There really is no other way to truly describe that than as evil, because it goes against the natural law. And when we look at this beautiful language of the Declaration of Independence, which was signed almost 241 years ago, is it not an amazing thing to see how clearly it was stated as to what the foundational basis of these United States was, is, and shall always be? Because you see, the legislative right of the people cannot be annihilated. It cannot be destroyed. It is inalienable. Means we cannot surrender it, and it cannot be taken from us. And any attempt to do so is illegitimate and void ab initio, meaning without legitimacy from its outset. Again, this is powerful. This speaks directly to the heart of how our system works and who we are, both as a nation and people. It's not something to be taken lightly. Again, all of this speaks to American exceptionalism. It is the embodiment of that term that so many in modern America seemingly have a problem with. The only reason that I can foresee that they'd have a problem with it is either they don't understand it or they want to destroy it to erect some other type of false government in the place of our naturally established constitutional republic. That is what it comes down to. And that is what it is always about. And without it, we have nothing. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, American exceptionalism is truly amazing. It's found in our foundational documents. And that is what we should reflect upon during this 4th of July. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy that last round as a shot to freedom. I'm Randy Wright, your captain. I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic suggestions, please feel free to either leave them here in the comment section on our YouTube page, or our Google Plus page, or even our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us over on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, Jeremy's personal Twitter account, the Blogspot account that is just chock full of information. And just as you will find in the description section of today's very special 4th of July program, you will find a link to the Cafe Press account, where there's all sorts of trinkets, goodies, novelty items in which you can celebrate your independence, either with our original Radio Aviation Excellence logo, or our First Class Passenger logo, or even the 2 Uplifting America logos. Ladies and gentlemen, you just can't go wrong with it. And if you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. All subscribers are welcome here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying the Wright Flyer. We hope to see you again next time.